There's no hope? Are there issues and problems in your life that you want to break away from and feel like you can't? Do you wonder, how can I be free from these issues that have destroyed my life? Well, my friend, I have the answer. Bible Way Hibner Memorial Church of God in Christ presents Chain Breakers, this and every Sunday at 9 a.m. here on WHYL.
From the L.B. Smith Ford Lincoln Studios, Oldies 102.9 is WHYL Carlisle.
Welcome to the Real Estate Radio Guys, your weekly source for all things real estate. We're your hosts, real estate broker John Rainville and your mortgage expert Kingsley Harmer discuss everything from mortgage rates to home staging for foreclosures and everything in between that affect the daily real estate market. Real people, real questions, real answers. Today's show is brought to you by www.pagoloan-com, your source for new mortgage loans. NMLS number 1018. EnviroQuest, trusted for home inspections and radon mitigation in Central PA for over 25 years. And brokersrealty.com, the easiest way to search for real estate in your hometown. Now, on to the show.
Good morning, everyone. Nice foggy day here in Pennsylvania this morning. What do you think, Kingsley? A little bit wet and dreary out there this morning.
It's the calm before the spring.
Yeah.
I'm all right with that.
Well, good morning. I'm John Rainville, broker of brokersrealty.com here in Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland. And my co-host is
Kingsley Harmer with pagoloan.com, GSF Mortgage, here in central Pennsylvania.
And our show today is going to be pretty interesting. I'm sort of excited. We've finally been able to hook up with Dan Pishnary, a local central Pennsylvania real estate broker, for a long time, and we're going to be discussing with Dan changes in the overall real estate market that he's gotten to see over the last 4 decades. Dan's run a successful operation for many years, coached many agents. A lot of our top agents in the area have, come through his firm. And he's seen a lot of change, so that's going to be interesting. We're going to be talking also with John Stas. John, from EnviroQuest today is going to be talking about attic inspections. Last week we did foundations, so this week it's going to be attics. So that ought to be interesting. And I think last week's show was phenomenal with the guys from Central PA Roofing. I mean, those guys, I learned so much last week, and they actually went out and did looked at a property for one of our agents this week, and just phenomenal. The customers were just thrilled with them, And I have to say, big thing there to Sean, because they answer their phones. I mean, the customer was just amazed. He called on a Sunday, and Sean was right back to him. Set something up and went out and checked out their roof.
Amazing how that customer service thing works.
Yeah, it really is. So, Kingsley, what are we? What's going on here in the mortgage industry? I mean, I know we're going to be posting up your most recent article. I mean, have we hit the ceiling on the interest rates? What are your thoughts?
Nope, and nope. We're at a basically 4-year high for the most part. I mean, we had a little bit of reprieve yesterday, in rates, but for the most part, over the last week, they just went up every day, or at least the indices went up every single day. That gave you that, cringe, hold your breath. How far are they going to go up? I don't see them stopping, but as we discussed prior to, it is going to cap. So I think we're kind of apexing.
Okay.
If you will, but I still think there's a little bit of movement left.
So we'll post your article up right after the show today. So if people want more in depth on that interest rate, you can either reach out to Kingsley at...
you can get me at PA Go Loan on Facebook. You can call me 717-200-4800.
Yeah, and that'll, if you have any questions there on the mortgage financing, refinancing, etc. So good morning. Dan, are you on the phone there, buddy?
Yes, I am.
We're just so thrilled that we were finally able to, connect. You and I have been talking about this for, a year almost?
I guess, yeah, it has been a while.
So, Dan, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? I mean, I've known you for as long as I've been in the real estate industry. I know my sister's known you longer than that. Tell us a little bit about your background and where you've come from.
I mean, I get to talk about my favorite topic, me?
Yeah, because yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll keep it brief, but I was very fortunate to stumble into the real estate business when I was 23 years old, 1976, and just loved it. Had a fantastic first year, and really enjoyed working with people, and I didn't have a background that supported me to be successful, but 40 years later, and I'm still doing it. Along the way, I started training other real estate people when I was 25. I started managing a real estate office when I was 27, and then opened my own company when I was 28, and have been a Century 21 office for 35 years. So it's been a wonderful ride. My 3 of my 5 children are in the business with me, and still having fun.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. I mean that I know you really have a lot of your family in the business, as do I. But you've actually mentored a lot of agents that I know in the area that are extremely successful. They're selling way over the national average of the 8 homes a year.
Oh yeah, thank you, John. And that's my passion is really helping people. It started out helping buyers and sellers, and then it switched to helping our agents, who would then help buyers and sellers. And it's all about what we give back to everybody.
So you've been with Century 21 for 35 years?
Yes.
For the same company? Wow.
Go ahead.
You don't hear that. I mean, it's always, leapfrog. It's everybody moves. So you don't hear somebody that has been steady with one company, especially for that long.
And we've seen so many franchises pop in and pop out.
It's a rarity in this market.
No, he's been rock solid.
Yeah, and I think it's that when I bought the franchise in 1982, it was Century 21 was on the cutting edge, and they have remained on the cutting edge for technology and exposure and advertising and promoting and benefits to my agents and benefits to our buyers and sellers. So I've just never seen the need to go anywhere else. I've been very happy.
So Dan, back when you first had Century 21, was that still in the gold jacket days?
Oh yeah. We wore gold jackets and proud of it. I don't have any more. They still have the gold jackets, and there's some markets where agents wear them all the time.
What's a gold jacket? You're gonna have to help. You're gonna have to help me out here, Dan.
Well, Century 21 started, I believe, 46 years ago, and they were in California. They were looking to make a statement in the marketplace. So it was a collection of smaller brokers that banded together under the name Century 21. And one of the things they did is they had this mustard yellow gold jacket. They were polyester at the time. Ooh. And if you were a Century 21 agent or broker, that's what you wore. It was kind of an identifier. And throughout the late 70s and into the 80s, that's what we were known for, as well as the Gold Post yard sign. And that's before we started advertising nationally and internationally. So it was a great way to get name recognition and to see that we were different.
So do you ever pull that out and just wear it for old time's sake?
I don't even have one anymore.
That's a shame. You could probably put that on eBay these days and probably get a pretty penny for it.
Maybe, but I used to wear it, and
wow.
It was a great branding tool.
Huh.
It really was.
Yeah, I mean, back then we were still walking around malls and shopping centers and that, and you'd see someone in one of those jackets, and you knew they were a Century 21 agent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was that big.
It's actually not a bad idea. You think about it. It'd probably work more today than even back then, I would imagine. Because now, the market's so flooded with realtors. How do you know who's who? You got Facebook. If you're just wearing around a gold jacket, they know you're a realtor.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So, Dan, can you tell us a little bit? So from the time you started, that was back in the days of the multi-list books. And did lockboxes right when you first started?
When I first started in the real estate business, there wasn't a multi-list. So you had to have a friend at every agency, and brokers and agents were not necessarily willing to share their listings. So you'd have to have a friend that would you could call them up and they'd tell you the new listings they had, or if you saw a sign, you'd call a company. I think we did have lockboxes, but you had to go to the listing broker's office to get the key for the lockbox because we all had our own lockbox keys. So to show 5 houses took a whole lot of time.
How in the world did you sell a house if none of the agents wanted to allow you to sell their house?
Well, it worked out. You'd sell more of your own listings than you would selling another company's listings.
People were still driving around. I mean, back then I'm sure you got many more sign calls than what we get today. I mean, now it seems to be more internet calls, or they punch the address into Google and it comes up. But I'm sure you guys got a lot of sign calls.
We got a lot of sign calls, and we would show a lot of houses. So it wouldn't be unusual for a Saturday to take somebody out and show them, 10 houses. You might show them 20, 30 houses before they buy.
So that was kind of like the first pocket listings, if you will. You kind of held them close to your chest and tried to sell them to your own clients.
That happened a lot. Happened a lot, and it, of course, as you know, it's so much better for the consumer today.
So you've definitely seen the technology, and as you said, that Century 21's on some of the cutting edge of that. What are some of the technology changes that you've seen that now your sons are using?
Well, and this is nothing new to anybody, but there's more technology in our phones than what we had access to even in the 1980s or 90s probably. But I think just the way people buy houses anymore, instead of looking at 10 or 20 houses in person, they might look at many more than the online versus driving around and looking at them. When they make the offers, we used to sit down with the people and write up contracts. With our company, that's done online. We have a product that people can actually sign online. It's legal. They're binding contracts. So that makes a big difference. I mean, I could go into the ridiculous, the fact that we didn't have copiers. That's a big technology change. The fax machine, which isn't even used anymore, was a big technology change. Did
you guys use like carbon copies back then for contracts?
Yeah, we had a one-page contract with. You'd have carbon paper, and
a one-page contract. One page.
Yes. Well, I might be exaggerating. Maybe there was a front and back to it.
Wow, and what do we have now in a typical contract? Literally probably one page of contract, and then, how many with, CYA statements, from that to the back of it.
I think 19 pages.
19 pages, I believe.
Wow.
But I think the big change, and I'm not answering your question with what I'm going to share, is that the biggest change that I've seen is the amount of protection that buyers and sellers both have now when they're entering into a real estate transaction. And literally, when I got in, it was, let the buyer beware. And it's just changed so much where, we've got seller's disclosures, home inspections, which are just critical when you're buying a house. Even with the lending. The lending process is just so much more consumer. It's complicated, but there are so many protections for the consumer, and I think as an industry, that's one of the things that I'm proudest of, to be a part of that change, where it's far easier, it's far safer, there's more protections when you're buying and selling a home.
So, Dan, when you first got in the business, because now, everyone's, everything's internet. How was the financing handled?
Well, we didn't have nearly the companies that we have. I guess Fannie Mae may have existed. I really didn't know. But all lending was local. So, we had many savings and loans companies, which really don't exist anymore. You'd go there, you'd go to a bank. If it was an FHA or a VA loan, you'd use a mortgage broker. But I'll say some names that I don't know if you remember or not, but Harris Savings was one of them, State Capital Savings and Loan, First Federal, and then there was even a West Shore Savings and Loan. These are really small. I don't think they were publicly traded companies that would get savings from the local community. People would save their money there, and then they would make loans for houses for people, or the local bank.
And Fannie Mae, by the way, folks, was established in 1938.
No, well, then they were there. We never knew what they were.
Well, yeah, they didn't. I don't think they had much of a presence till probably the early 70s, as far as really changing anything from a lending standpoint. And now lending, like you said, there's so many protections for the buyer, whether they want them or not. A lot of times, especially since 2007, it seems like our market and everything has been seriously constricted as far as what will allow and, what they'll lend on and how many buyers you've seen. I'm sure at that particular point in time it's affected your business as well. So thank goodness it's lightened up a little bit. But at the end of the day, these protections are still there for the buyers and sellers.
They really are, and the settlement process is it's complicated. It's more complicated for us, and it's more complicated for the consumers. But again, there's more protection, and the more protection that we get as consumers, the more complicated the process becomes, and I think that's a good thing.
So in the early years, when you were selling real estate, we didn't have buyer's agency. So I guess that's really been one of the precursors to, a lot of this consumer protection.
And I'm glad you brought that up. You're absolutely correct. When, going back, again, your memory's probably better than mine, or you're more learned than I am. But I don't remember what year we started with buyer agency. But prior to that, we didn't really represent buyers. We were representing the seller. The seller was paying our fee. We had no loyalty, and they had no loyalty to us, buyers. I don't think anybody was, that we would lie and steal and cheat them, but we weren't there to look out for their benefit. We were there to protect the seller. And that was a fantastic change that I think it might have started out in Colorado or California, that we now represent buyers, and we are there for their protection as well as the sellers. And that was at the time, it was a big change to go through. But again, I believe that everything should be about the consumer, and that was a huge step at protecting people.
Back in the day then, before the buyer agency came out, was it so cutthroat? Were realtors that competitive that they would just steal a buyer out from under you at any given point? Was there an unwritten rule, or was it game on, dog eat dog world back in the day?
It was pretty dog eat dog. Kind of not the Wild West, but I had the opportunity to work with older guys that had been in the business in the 1950s. And even into the 60s and the 50s, and that was really dog eat dog. And there was a lot more professionalism, I think, when I started. And I've always been a big supporter of the Association of Realtors, and I think that is by having that trade organization as an industry, we've really been able to become more and more professional, where there's more ethics involved.
Dan, I can remember back in the day going to show a house when when everyone pretty much went to that first Supra lockbox key around here, you'd go to show the house, you'd open up the lockbox, and there'd be no key, Kingsley. Because see, he's laughing. Because the agent that showed it before, they took the key so you couldn't show it because they wanted to make sure they had time to go write the contract.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
So,
I haven't heard that happening for a long time, fortunately.
No, thank goodness.
Well, now you see people with lock boxes that they have the lockbox wrapped around a garden hose, for security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's been a big change too, Dan, though, that you've seen, from the time where we used to have to drive around to different offices to pick up keys to the lockbox that worked. We had combination ones. We had ones that work with a super key. Now to the electronic lockboxes that tracks just about everything.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's fantastic, and that certainly offers a lot more protection for a seller when they have a lockbox on their home. That anybody that goes in there, we know the time they went in, we know the time they went out, we know who they are. We send them an email right away looking for feedback or results of the showing. That's been, again, there's just so many of these technologies that have just made the business easier, but offers a lot of protection for the consumer.
With that being said, I find it very interesting, from the time that, you started back in the 70s and 80s, when you talk about working with a buyer per se, how many homes on average, when you first started, did you show a buyer? And out of those homes, how many, you didn't have access to any photos or anything prior to, did you?
No, there were no pictures. It was all, visual and driving around. But the territory that you worked in was a lot smaller. Whereas now, as you've done with your company, John, you're all over the state. That would just be unheard of. When you were an agent, you had, maybe the West Shore or, Carlisle or, suburban Harrisburg. It would be a very small area that you would stay in. Because you had to know, as they say from the musical, The Music Man, you've got to know the territory. You had to know the territory.
It really has changed. But, one of the first companies that you were with, like with Stuart Derrick, didn't they have 2 offices back in the day?
We did. It was all locally Harrisburg. We had more than that. I think we had about 4 or 5 that I remember. A good memory. That's who I was. I didn't start with them, but I was with them for a number of years, and that's where I learned how to run a real estate office. Was at Stuart Derrick.
So basically, then, the amount of homes that you had to show somebody back then was more than it is today.
Yes, because and forget about the shortage of inventory that we have right now. But even when there's a lot of homes on the market and the inventory is good, more people are shopping from their home, looking at the internet, looking at all of the websites that all of us use, and Century 21. I believe, I don't even know the number. I think we're on like 300 or 400 different websites.
So with all the technology, they have, what is it, Matterport now, that you can do virtual tours of the property. So even without having to go to the property, they know whether they like it. So as a realtor, that actually kind of helps, right? Narrow down.
Absolutely.
To the point where they're more serious about this house because they've been able to see all the inside already. Yes,
and it makes it enables the agents to do a much larger volume of business than what they were ever able to do. And that's been a good thing, I think, for the industry and for the public.
So, Dan, they said, I remember back in the day when we finally went to the multi-list books, then people don't understand, those only came out, what was it, every week or every other week? And then we only had one black and white photo of the front of the house.
Right.
And we used to have to you'd make copies.
Yeah.
Yep, you'd make copies of them so that you could show your customer these are the houses that are available.
And that's how you got them interested in the house, is a black and white copy of the front of the house.
If you were lucky, yeah.
And that was it?
Yes, correct.
Nice.
And because of the publishing deadlines, sometimes you missed, there was properties on the market that you didn't know about. I mean, so the advent of the internet and the multi-list and going on computers.
So at what point did you guys start advertising, the big open house things in the Sunday paper when the paper was actually still used? I mean, because you said before you didn't really have a book of photos or anything like that. When did the newspaper become the advertising platform?
Back in the day, your day, it was definitely, print advertising really held solid, really all the way through the 80s and part of the 90s.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that used to be the Bible. That's where consumers would shop for houses if they were going to, before they might talk to a realtor, would be through the Patriot News or the Carlisle Sentinel.
And it was expensive.
Yes.
To print it.
Oh, no. Well, no. I'll just tell you, I still remember just for like a classified ad, to run a classified ad on a house back in the day with the Patriot News, it was $12 per line. So you put in, 4-line ad, it was $48, plus then you had to put your broker's information in there and the phone numbers and that, so you might get to a 6 or 8 line. And $100 back in the 80s was some real money.
And then obviously that's where the 3BR and, bathroom and all the abbreviations came from, because you didn't feel like paying for them.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's been a definite plus, wouldn't you say, Dan? The internet and that has given us some cost savings.
Absolutely, and it makes it much easier. When you talked about if you listed a house today, it might not hit the public for 3 weeks till it came out in the multi-list book and everything, and now if we put a house on the market today, it's reaching out to thousands and thousands of people, within 24 hours. So it's all good. It's all good. It's been, it's a lot to keep up with. Especially as you're getting older and you're used to the old ways. But it's a far better system.
So we're going to continue on with this conversation, Dan, as soon as we get back from a quick commercial break.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
The Real Estate Radio Guys with John Rainville and Kingsley Harmer. We'll be right back. Veterans, active duty military, and reservists. brokersrealty.com thanks you for your service. And during February, if you list or buy a home with brokersrealty.com, we will reward you with a getaway for 2 at settlement. As in a cruise, trip to Vegas, or even a whole week at a tropical resort-type getaway. Text REWARD to 79564. That's REWARD to 79564. Or Google brokersrealty.com today.
Are you working with a mortgage company that offers pre-approvals or just pre-qualifications? Does your mortgage company reward police, firefighters, military, teachers, and nurses with better rates and fees? How would you like to apply and be updated on the status of your loan right from your phone? Introducing GSF Mortgage Corporation, where technology and relationships make the difference. Visit pagoloan.com to apply or call 717-200-4800 for more information. NMLS number 1018.
How do I sound?
Buying or selling a home? For professional home inspection, call EnviroQuest of Harrisburg. Their certified home inspectors will conduct a thorough inspection and provide a detailed report with many pictures. They'll explain the findings. Do you have elevated radon levels in your house? Call EnviroQuest. They have fixed over 10,000 homes over the last 25 years. For a professional home inspection or radon mitigation, call EnviroQuest at 233-6144, 233-6144, or visit EnviroQuest online at evqharrisburg.com. That's evqharrisburg.com.
Back to the show, the Real Estate Radio Guys with John Rainville and Kingsley Harmer.
And we're back with Dan Pictionary, who's obviously been in the field for a couple of years. So you've been pretty successful from the get-go. My question as, let's say, maybe an aspiring realtor, how has the pay changed? I mean, now you say that it makes it easier for a realtor to do larger volume, but has the commissions changed over the years? Has it been the same percentage? How does that typically work? I mean, is it just more volume these days and you just have to be more... I mean, how has it changed for you from that aspect, from the amount of customers that you work with?
Well, I think one of the things, all this technology, and we've just talked about the tip of the iceberg of the different technologies that we all use, but it enables an agent to achieve a much larger volume of business. So, back in the day, if somebody sold 20 houses or 20 properties in a year, I don't know that they were a superstar, but that was a pretty big accomplishment. And we have individual agents now that's in our office that are selling, 40, 50 properties. I can brag up my son. He's been in the business for 14 years, and I think he sold 80 properties last year. That was just unheard of.
Wow. So quite a bit different. So it's basically enables you to be more efficient doing the same job.
Yeah, it used to be the only way you got to that type of volume back in the day, Dan, wasn't it? It was mainly like the new construction guys that they sort of had the lock on it. But now, I mean, we're talking about real estate agents, realtors that are doing it with resale homes. I mean, so it's amazing. Dan, what about the implementation of teams? I mean, that's come up, during your watch.
Yes, that's been where you have like a company within a company. And with the advent of teams, it gets a little murkier as far as who did what production. But, I think there's good and there's bad about having teams, being on teams. And as a consumer working with teams, I think there's good and bad. So I'm not really answering your question.
So teams haven't been around forever? I mean, is this a newer...
No. You'd have... I remember back in the 70s where, the top agents had a support person that would work with them to, do the paperwork. And, we were on the road a lot, driving back and forth, delivering contracts. And that's what it used to feel like sometimes that I was, just a high-paid delivery boy. Running papers back and forth to get signatures, and they don't have to do that now.
Just the things that our phones do now, our cell phones, which everyone has, attached to their hip, that has just made our business a lot easier, but at the same time, it's made us be connected 24 hours a day. Right?
Good observation, John, and as you know, I could work totally with a buyer from my phone. I could be in California and write up an offer, get it presented to the seller, get it back to the buyer for their approval, get it to the lender, get it to the title company, get it to the other agent, all from my phone. And that is, again, it's great for the consumer, but you're right, the top agents today are far more available than what we used to be. So the top agents in my company, they're not working 24 hours a day or 16 hours a day, but the really good ones, somebody needs something at 6 o'clock on Saturday night, they answer the question and they deliver. I can give a little plug for our company. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. We call it concierge service. But it's a big thing to be buying a home today, and it's very competitive, and that's the kind of service that we want to offer people.
So that kind of circles us back to the whole team question. If you're a very busy agent, obviously, I mean, how many people are on a team nowadays?
Not a straight answer to that. Sometimes a team might be 2 agents, and it's just an administrative person. I know there's some teams, and there's some real estate companies that operate as a team where there's one person, might be the broker or the owner, that does business, and there could be a half a dozen people that, 2 or 3 of them just work with buyers, 2 or 3 of them just work with sellers, a couple of them just do promotional or advertising to the prospecting part of the business where they'll generate leads for the team.
So it's really, in essence, just creating another company inside of a company to work your own individual needs or lack thereove as far as the services that you might not be good at.
That's right. And I think sometimes with teams, a seller or a buyer is going to get a very good level of service. But the complaint that I've heard from some people is that if I'm the person that runs the team and somebody wants to do business with me, my name might be there as a team leader, but they might not have the access to me that they want. They're working with somebody else.
I can understand that.
Yeah, but I think overall they're a good thing.
Well, again, it allows you to be more productive. And at some point, obviously, with that production, you can't touch everything quite as often as you would if you were just yourself. But at the same time, wouldn't that demand, from a top realtor that's been in the business, if they refuse to work with anybody but you, wouldn't that demand kind of a higher premium on your services?
You'd think so. I'm not sure.
Doesn't work out in reality quite that often, but that's the way it should be.
Yeah, probably. Some of it depends on the individual agent. If I was an agent starting out today, I wouldn't want to be on a team because if I'm on a team, if I'm on John's team, then I'm working to grow John's business and John's visibility, not my own. And most people don't get into real estate to help somebody else create a business. They get into real estate because they want to. It's a way to start your own business, even though you work for a broker. That's
an interesting topic. Then, from back in the day when you started to today, how has the training and or the sink or swim mentality changed over the years from an agent perspective? If I'm completely green. I was working at a desk for the last 5 years as a receptionist, and I decided I want to get into real estate. What's my path look like today versus 20 years ago or 30 years ago?
Well, when I walked in the door 40 years ago, my broker said, "There's the desk, there's the phone. Welcome to real estate. You're on your own." Literally, that's what he said to me.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, what do I do?" And he said, "Find people that want to buy or sell real estate." I said, "Well, how do I do that?" And he said, "Well, start calling people. Go knock on doors." And I did what he said, and it worked.
Obviously worked out for you.
Yeah, it was before the do not call list. There wasn't the do not call list. When I got in the business, the only thing extra I think we got at that point in time was the old blue city directory. Do you remember those days?
That's right.
So we had a city directory, and that was like a phone book that gave you everyone's phone number, but listed by the street. So you could go down Main Street, and call every home, and that's really what we did. We were real phone dogs back then.
Really? That was it?
Yeah. If you called somebody on the phone, they'd actually answer it.
Wow, well, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Because it was before answering machines.
Sure.
So phone blocking was actually taking it off the hook.
Yeah, there was no caller ID. I mean, lots of changes.
Wow. So from back then to here's a desk and a phone, good luck. I mean, nowadays, what is it? Videos, training? What kind of somebody working into the business today, what can they expect?
Well, and that's one of the benefits of Century 21. So we have extensive training for all of our agents, especially the brand new ones, online. Some of it's live, some of it's recorded. So you could be, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 6 a.m. in the morning. You could be getting some training if that's what you wanted. But we pride ourselves on the live training that we have in our office. Our particular office, we have a lot of staff, management staff that are there to help the agents. So we have training classes. We probably have 3 opportunities a week for an agent, new or experienced, where they'll get training in person, live. Some of it's with me. Some of it's with our other manager or our general manager. A lot of technology training on how to use all these systems, which my other son, who's the general manager of the company now, that's what he does. That's one of the things that he does. But there's a lot of live action training. Some of the best training that we have in our company, and I'm sorry, I don't mean this to be a plug for our company, is that we actually work with the agents. So I still go on appointments. They're not my appointments. I go on appointments with other agents to help them and to show them. And our office works as a team, so we have agents that will help each other.
So, Dan, you really have like a mentoring philosophy there that's been at the core of your business for years, right?
And that's really, John, that's my, other than helping people buy and sell houses, that's my passion, is coaching, mentoring. I just like to be a part of helping somebody grow and develop, and I've just been blessed to have I get a lot of opportunities.
In addition to that, you also do a lot to give back to our community.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice of you to say that.
I mean, you're just involved with so many things over the years, giving back that I think that's one of the benefits, too, that, a lot of realtors, fail to miss right now, that they're not giving back. And definitely, we're seeing, some definite changes in the market. Changes in the technology. But then at the end of the day, it's still a face-to-face, belly-to-belly business, isn't it?
And you're right. You're absolutely correct. And I think, there was a time when all of the disintermediation was going on because of the Internet. And there's industries that just don't exist the way we knew them before, like travel agents, stockbrokers, insurance. There's a lot of industries that they haven't gone by the wayside, but you don't have as many people because the Internet has taken out all of that. Real estate, it can't happen that way because there's so much personal belly-to-belly, as you said, John, interaction in helping people to negotiate and to navigate a real estate transaction. It is far more complicated and takes far more expertise and far more professionalism on our part to help somebody buy or sell a house than it ever did before. And there's far more liabilities for buyers and sellers out there. There's a greater chance of fraud, not from the realtors, but just from people on the Internet.
I'd like to say that we're Sherpas. Our job is to really guide them so they don't fall off the cliff. Or,
I like that.
Freeze at night. Kingsley's laughing at that because he didn't know what a Sherpa was, but Dan, he didn't even know what one of those test patterns was with the Indian on, the black and white TV screen.
How would I know about that?
Oh, my.
So we're really seeing a change with the millennials and that. So, Dan, what's your big prediction? If you because of all your vast experience, where do you, I mean, there's so many things that come across that says real estate agents are going to be obsolete, next month, next year. What's your thought on that?
I just don't see it happening. I don't see how it can happen. In any given real estate transaction, there are so many points of negotiations that take place, and people think it's just negotiating a price when they buy a property when they make an offer, and there's a counter going back and forth. But this home inspection process, which is, again, I think it's fantastic, but we now get into a home inspector can come up with a laundry list of things, and the buyer wants. I think one of the changes is that it's not just millennials either, but people expect everything to be right today, and I don't want to say perfect, but they want everything taken care of. So you might have a list of 16 items that the seller doesn't want to do anything about, and the buyer wants it all fixed.
Some chipping on the windowsills. I want new windows all around the house.
It could be that. It could be something very minor. It could be something very major that we just didn't even address 40 years ago.
Well, and I think that right there kind of drives down the point that says, there is no process that doesn't have a realtor involved, because just that little topic alone right there probably takes how many back and forth negotiations that you're just not going to get on a computer screen without that belly to belly, as you say.
That's right. So if we were selling, if you're selling a product online, then it's very easy to commoditize it. But you can't commoditize what we do. It's an art form. It's not as glamorous as it looks from the outside. Everybody thinks they want to get into real estate. It's hard work, and it takes a special personality, that can really succeed at this business.
And it's funny, we're kind of running out of time, Dan, but, just to drive that point home, the belly to belly, you've got all of these companies, XYZ, that are advertising these really low fees, even though they don't do anything for you. And I'm sure there's a market for those types of people that have been there or maybe bought, 5 or 6 homes in their lifetime. But for the most part, somebody buying a huge purchase like this needs their hand held through each process because it's a new path that they've never been down. And, you're there to guide them and keep them away from, the sand traps, if you will, and stepping into the wrong areas. Because people investing this kind of money, it's an investment. It's a huge purchase.
It's the largest purchase that the average person makes. And we deal a lot with relocation, people moving in and out of the area. And, some of these people, men and women that are moving, have bought and sold more houses, personal homes, than I have. But they still want and need the services that we have. Because it's
like you
the
said.
navigation.
I don't see it going anywhere. I don't see how you do not have that personal service in a huge purchase like this. It's not like going out and buying something off the internet.
That's the key.
Right.
It's service. It's service.
Yes.
End of the day.
That's something that we pride ourselves on. That's one of the ways that we can separate ourselves from the competition.
Well, hey, I really have learned quite a bit. I mean, everything from, the dog-eat-dog world back in the 60s and 70s. But it certainly has changed quite a bit. And we, the listeners, and we really appreciate you coming on today. What's the best contact information for you if they wanted to reach out, for your services in today's market?
Oh, I didn't know I was going to get to do an ad.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we even have your information up on our site.
Oh, well, very good. So, our office is we're a medium-sized company in the marketplace, and we are a regional office from Carlisle to Hershey and Perry County and Northern York County. And our web page, go to Century 21. You'll find us. We're in Camp Hill, or you could call nobody calls anymore, 717-737-2121. If you have any questions about a career in real estate, I'd love to talk to you, or anything we could do for you. So thank you for letting me put in a commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. And don't forget, when you call Dan, like we discussed, if you want to work with him only, you got to have a premium service added onto that.
You know what? They don't. If they're your listeners, all they have to do is call me, and whether they buy or sell, it doesn't matter. But if they have a question or need help, I'll help them personally.
Thanks.
They have to tell me they're your listener.
Well, make sure you tell them that, folks. Dan, it was definitely a pleasure having you on.
Thanks so much.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks for what you guys do. Great show.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting because Dan has just been, as I can say, a mentor. He set me straight early on in the business when I thought I was all that in a bag of chips. Very diplomatically, though.
Nothing's changed, apparently.
No, he tells me he doesn't remember that, but I remember it distinctly being there in his office. And, yeah, it was, he's always been a straight shooter. So, folks, if you are looking for a career in real estate or if you're looking for someone, definitely reach out to Dan.
So we move from one Sherpa, since we seem to be pushing that word, to another Sherpa of the home inspection phase. John, good morning. How you doing today?
Good morning. Great. How are you doing, guys?
Doing great. I know we're running a little bit late, but what's our fabulous topic of the day?
Yeah, today just wanted to discuss a little bit about inspecting attics and what we find and what, some of the limitations. A lot of times we get into a house and, attic is basically a roof space. So there's a lot of limitations as far as, we get in there and there's just a little tiny access that's not big enough for a person to get up through, or we get in there and there's, several roof areas and only one of them has an access hole. So a lot of times what we do is when I train my inspectors, it's really interesting listening to Dan and some of the parallels between businesses the importance of training your employees and training people that work with you, and how rewarding that is, to put your focus on training. I found it really interesting listening to Dan talk about that. But anyway, getting back to the attic dilemma of how do you inspect an attic when it's got so many limitations. So what I always, when we do have an access to get into the attic, I always tell my guys, you gotta get up in there and get your head close to the roof so you can get a vantage point. Even though there may be limitations as far as, a foot and a half or two, a foot and a half of insulation, there's a lot of risk to climbing back through that, and you can actually do a lot of damage. So we train our inspectors, get up in there, get your head up towards the ceiling so that you can take your bright flashlight or your camera and get pictures panoramically. So some of the things we look for, we look at the bathroom fans. A lot of times they'll be vented up into the attic, so we can see those vents. We take pictures of that. That can cause problems, excess moisture in the attic, mold. We examine the structure of the roof. We document, is it trusses? Is it, the type of structure that's up there? Pretty interestingly, about a week ago, I was in a house that was built, must have been the 1700s, and all the beams were cut with an axe, and you could see the hatchet marks. It was what's called peg and mortise style construction, where there's not, ridge board or things that you would find in modern construction. It's really interesting to see how people did it, a couple hundred years ago. So yeah, we document how is the structure of the roof. What type is it? What are the limitations? What are the things to look at with each different type of structure? For example, trusses. We look at the gusset plates. How are the pieces of wood put together? Are there pieces missing? Did a contractor cut out pieces, which you should never do on a truss? We look for signs of mildew. One of the big things we find in houses, especially ones from the 60s or the 50s, when they had different philosophies of building, is we find that air from the second floor, from the living space, is getting up into the attic and can cause some mold or mildew problems. So we look at the sheeting really closely to look for signs of excess moisture, things that might cause problems.
I was going to ask, is a roof or an attic area supposed to be kind of airtight, or is it supposed to ventilate?
Well, depending on what type of insulation, that gets into sort of a trick question when getting into the blown foam insulations. But so basically, the more you want to have an attic ventilated, but if you can close off, the reason it needs to be ventilated is because the possibility of air from in the house, the heated air getting up into the attic, as you seal what's called air sealing, as you seal that air off, the need for ventilation becomes less because you don't have that warm air during the winter that can get up into the attic and then release its moisture when it hits the cold air in the attic. So it's kind of a complex, there are formulas that tell you how much ventilation per square foot that you actually need, and we look at those things.
Now, in the summertime, let's say, for example, the second floor or the main floor is sealed off from the attic, right? In a perfect world. You've got insulation to obviously keep that heat in the house and or cool for that matter. So, when we're talking about different weather conditions, then if that is sealed off and you've got a 110-degree day pounding down on that roof, at that point, is that where the ventilation comes into play that says, if this is completely sealed with the sun beating down on a black tar roof, you're going to start to get some issues underneath the roof, right, in that attic space.
Yeah, you don't want that space to get too hot. But in that same token, the roof that, as you described, with the newer types of insulation, such as the polyiso, which is, R6 or R7 per inch, and, the sealing of everything off, there are theories of, let's say, insulating the roof sheathing with a polyiso foam that's, usually use open cell on a roof like that so it can breathe a little bit. You're going to reduce that temperature. The insulation value itself is going to cut that temperature down so that you don't need as much ventilation.
So you might need a little bit, but you don't need the overboard. So,
yeah, you definitely, as you said, you don't want it to get 130, 140 degrees. But, 99, 100 degrees usually is pretty typical. And then during the winter time, that attic, ventilated attic is going to get, down close to the freezing mark, 30, depending on the insulation factor, once again, how much heat from the living space is getting up there. But it's going to get cold up there.
So there's more engineering to it than meets the eye, apparently.
Yeah, as a general rule, though, as you seal and you separate and, keep that air from the living space from getting up there, you're going to need less ventilation. But general construction, code-built home, there's formulas for how much ventilation you need, so that they just go by the book as far as, how much ridge vent or gable vent or soffit vent.
And that would be something, obviously, that you can point out to, a homeowner. And obviously that's going to be more of an issue for an existing built home, somebody that's already there that says, hey, look, we just had a roof put on. Do I need more ventilation? Because it seems like there's maybe bubbling, or, that's kind of when nail hole pops and everything can happen in your roof. So
sure.
What's the best contact information for you if somebody's questioning whether or not they either need more ventilation or if they've got some issues in their attic?
Sure. Best contact number is 717-233-6144.
That was 233-6144, correct?
That's it.
And you're online at ebqharrisburg.com. And, of course, they can find you on Facebook. And, of course, we're going to have your contact information up on our Facebook page, Real Estate Radio Guy.
Yep.
John, thanks for coming on and educating us on attic spaces.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend.
Yep.
You do the same.
So I've got an interesting sort of summary of what Dan Pishneri from Century 21 went over. Actually, I got this from Sharon Fox Slater, and actually an Australian realtor, and I think it's pretty interesting, the changes over the last 4 decades. So, folks, we are now, as realtors, contactable 24 hours a day thanks to our mobile phones. We used to keep our contacts in something that ended with an X, a Rolodex, a Filofax, but now we use our mobile phones. Instead of using a camera loaded with film that needs to be developed at a shop and picked up a week later, we take photos with our mobile phones. We can send information overseas globally by email, yes, from our mobile phones, without sending a telegram or paying for the word stop or writing a letter. We have many more staff members instead of just 2 brokers. We have 9 offices instead of only 1. Our offices are quiet because there are no typing pools or telex machines. We still CC people even though Kingsley didn't know what this was, I don't think. Don't use carbon copy paper. Instead of handing over yellow envelopes containing cash, we pay our staff electronically. Our offices smell better because no one smokes in them. We may not have ashtrays anymore, but we do have espresso machines and water coolers. We do not use the white pages because we have Google, even on our mobile phones. We still have lunch, but they are no longer 3 hours long over 3 martinis. It's more often a lunch with a sandwich at our desk.
Wait. That's how you used to have lunch back in the day? You used to have martinis for lunch?
Right after we went on tour. We didn't even talk with Dan about going on tour. We still make tentative showings, but we don't literally pencil them in with a pencil. If we want to make a visual point in a presentation, we use PowerPoint instead of a flip chart. Our team no longer boasts flared trousers, large collars, loud paisley ties, or, in Dan's case, the gold jackets. But some of the younger ones do sport tattoos. We record things on memory sticks or in the cloud instead of paper files. If we fly nowadays, we get free headphones and sometimes NCTV, but we don't get a zip-up vinyl bag emblazoned with the airline's logo. We cover cyber exposure, but that's not covered by your health insurance. We don't have a mail boy or an inter-office pony anymore, but we do have an IT help desk.
Quite the change over the years.
Lots of changes.
So basically, the summary is you can pretty much do it from your mobile phone.
That's correct. Well, we're out of time, so till